Assalamu alaikum bari ngoli kali kontong bi talata lungo July karotili warula 2026 kabondi kibaro network kalnal badi male mpamane mutanan ka kibaro le sambale nan kibaro to alibamo ila lamin sadam sanya ngai kirimbas bami yalon kai wole kumandi anama baro kamma be diam kan kuma kan jawolu baro akamin fo banko dingol ye ka moldu ndi nendiro to ate fangola kuma kangola akamin fo alaji useni o katarane natari abe tanjiro ke kanko mobe yalon ko sasa mesen jamale bala mi yalon ko fango yo sasal kumandi bara diamuta president Adama Barrow anda dandala kay tanjiro ci ka kumol mul fo moliye diminna la karola ay banko dingol jahase nyaminna fo mol mantara e kukiling mol be nyonen na watini watila aya kuma ko nyim bay andum aya dasoti president Adama Barrow la ay mine fay anda fay nyaadi la albo moyda be duno ka cal ko ngalla moy ngaf mol mul soto ka bondi e la min sadam sanya mul budun sal tentu ngali jeyi ngal nimbala tel midalon kal kala moy le banko kono anim banko fanam bantala butungal nal badi malem pamane hela baraka ba calla moy ko nyimala
mbadi ngamen ko ngal kontal to ken non al konton sen wala kabin ko en avocat on bakara flobela dinden ke ba muskafrin ke melbe banko kan ani melbe banko e bantala nal badi malamin sadam sanya eke badi mansa mba falale assalamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi taala wa barakatuh yo mbadi ngol nata pour kala kacani nan leaje na update to ko ngasa fi nyamin Sanji fula komanto 2 years ago nga update do jenko nte I believe that Tamnabia is suffering from frontotemporal disorder dolka frontotemporal dementia F.T.D nga dalilo landilung and I was hoping that the government will take it seriously but unfortunately molu mata seriously ya jela komenko I believe he told this is just a mere political language or political statements, whereas they don't take it seriously. And 2 years after, I decided and I hope and I pray and doctor and all advisors all they will take it seriously. Puruka ifanaya ku kesi kabula ku no makajube. Na mira lola. This is what I believe. Ko he is suffering from frontotemporal disorder or frontotemporal dementia. In frontotemporal dementia, it's a group of progressive neurodegenerative disease. Meyalonko brain in frontal and temporal lobes are damage. And jama in frontotemporal disorder or frontotemporal dementia, akamole mutamol melialonko is yobe between 40 and 65 years. 2 years ago, we remain kilanga for Onyamala. And Tamabia is yobe want to explain Onyamala fana. Akamole mutakonga for melialonko is yobe between 40 and 65 years. Sangitan nanikata, sangita woro ane lulakan. Isiyo katara walto. Ukamoneke na aye mota. It lead drastically. Ila personality, behaviors, and ila language akola change. Andonga wala jele. Tamnebia emayato. Ala personality, ala behavior, and ala language nyinka wala change. If you have frontotemporal disorder. Awolo kono. The most common type wala behavioral variant. Jannin ka tentembe dan hako dan la kudo to wato de na ka kudos because mo dema ka fonyele na update ko sometimes na pronunciation oni docho ka finti ye bakala because everything I do is in Dutch not docho le fam betata na angalo so wakati na wato de na pronunciation oni na ko docho ni ka finti ye because mo dan tambije melkalo ka fonye kaita nena kono ndo ni afunye ni nata mfalla mo enka realize so ni wakita alsal hakotu nyebake yo bara prokaten den komen ko nganyil mel foten ning frontotemporal disorder or frontotemporal dementia kabenke drastically la personality behaviors and language are all change and the most common type the behavioral variants wadun kamoneke okay, extreme changes like your personality. And the new you lost or you have no inhibitions, apathy, and lack of empathy. So near of inhibitions. Inhibition. What is inhibition? Okay, in a psychological restraint. Akawalema. So ni wakina watu man. Itakake modati if you don't have inhibitions. Wala mnyinti. Ibuka ngoma kula. Ibuka malaka kuke. Ibuka silanka kuke. Akati na so make sure that, for example, mome yalanka ka ngoma baka kamal bake. In a abita kula kala mome yalanka in a normal circumstances ata okela. Atekela nyinde kabe sila la mole la barabe ngoma la rabe malu la ni respect kome nembunya asuto mole obati na kube kuta atake no la kuma be kuma to atafo no la dulato to. But if you don't have inhibitions, you lost that because wakamoneke that prevent people from acting freely. Inhibition okawole. But excuse me. But if you don't have inhibition, then you act freely. You expressing inner emotions the way you want without thinking or without caring about the effect of making other people feel. You don't care about that anymore. Because you don't have inhibitions. So you don't care niafo abenyin dol affect la nyame wamba be fon ite fon la personality about affect la nyame ite bugo geno because you don't have inhibitions. And nibota what fana yeta and a psychological and social context. And a psychological and social context whether mune ke no later no. Well, then in a social setting, you don't have inhibition. You don't have inhibition. So NIM also, that means you do things freely. You think freely. You say things freely. You do things freely without a shame or any shame of nintenga nyinki. Abemune tinyalante for the personality. No. Oh, Nintanga Nyinki, Ndela family, how are they going to feel in the society? I believe remember. No. You know, and they tell him, he wouldn't care a same or anything careful come and go. Never you menkela, one many men follow. Ninda Fango can send the phone party members, so how are they going to feel? No. Oh, how would opposition going to react? On kuma comment about folating, kilating. You don't care about that because you don't have any inhibitions. And you wouldn't care about go banku dingolo Gambia dingolo Gambia no le melia lonke be Gambia ya ani mel be Gambia bantala ndebe mem fola me menkila. How are they going to feel? One less social life, he wouldn't care about that. Just to give one example, I could remember there was a time at my work, the seminar sort of with a lot of doctors and nurses within the country. So though I'm telling Barrow is from a different part of the country, in that seminar. So maybe you can bring when we are having coffee break. So come, I came from Gambia. I all my. So Babila Nata, when you go about Saddam, as for Gambian, how can you people vote someone in office? May Yalonko, Akafreo Lel Wulinde. Inkijo Infara. Janna Kala Kumufna, may Yalonka Akafreo Le Wood, Casafobli Dakono. But there are from Kohakon, when you make your man link it. No, didn't tell me a full about Flamenca, but straight away, number in that hey, Saddam saying we are living in a modern world of technology. Anything that any language you can be translated, are put in the internet. So, but below from Fanataria, no, doctor. Gambia, think I'm from Zambia. Gambia, think I'm from. Oh, yeah, Gambia and Zambia, they are similar. Oh, it is Gambia, I'm from Zambia. So, below can I work on a telephone, so I'm going to come back because Malta. But I tell me over Braba for the Gelon. And up to now, He never came out and regret. He never came out and apologized Gambians. Kafu konganyi memfatan tenin. Because monamo, ala social and psychological context ni wala tinyata. I don't have any inhibition. Ala behavioral variant, the frontotemporal disorder or frontotemporal dementia, akanyini tinyamo la milo yinkono. Ala nyin psychological context ni ngafata. And for example also, isaje komenko, mwome yalonko, ateka malu bakele. Akatara ngomari na akatara mondi ndere nga fangma fende fo akamalo menkele. Even kafokon. Yena otara kafokon, for example, niwe dolota e dolola mi. Na e dolola mi asira. Akamalu molu meli nya, molu melu la normally. Aka ngoma molu melu. Wo molu nyata silo ay lenyi o fare. Ba wo molu nyata silo abe kuma fola. Wambasi sumuna afuna, wambasi kule kya si kumalfo. No kumome ya lonko in normal circumstances ate o fola. Because mole mata kan malola, mole mata kan ngoma. Comme tamina be na kulumbe ba afra salihino la, malala salihino la, malala. Ma fo dolo mi ngola keje, don't get me wrong. Nka example li ma fo dolo mi ngola tinga ka kumo dolo fo de. No, don't get me wrong. Nka example la di. Comme moi me yalonko akamalo baka na akangoma niwe dolo mi akamanya le menkeno. Mo me mfana yalonko is he or she is suffering from frontotemporal disorder, frontotemporal dementia, aksini manya akeno. Because of monem ala behavioral variants he or she don't have any inhibitions. A psychological and social context will look at it. You go to the second one, that is apathy. Apathy. Nico apathy. What do you mean by apathy? Akamoneke. Well, it is lack of feelings, lack of emotions, lack of interest or concern. Apathy can you make more? If you are having frontotemporal disorder or frontotemporal dementia, ala behavioral variant then you go to apathy. Ala apathy you have lack of feelings. You don't care about anything. You don't feel or how people are going to feel about what you are going to say. You don't care how other people, whether you will hurt them, what you are going to say. You don't care about hurting others. As long as you say what you want to say, where you want to say, when you want to say, and how you wanted to say it, you don't care about it. The apathy can relate anymore. And within this apathy, there are, key aspects of apathy. In key aspect of apathy is number one, emotional blunting. Emotional blunting is one of the key aspects of apathy. Emotional blunting, akamoneke. Well, it reduces the ability to feel or express positive and negative emotion. Emotional blunting kawaleke. Ila positive and negative emotion. Wala ability nyinga kawaletinya. It reduces the ability to feel or to express emotional positive and negative emotion. So now your ability to feel and express, I will reduce. So at that moment, you wouldn't care whether the emotion is positive or negative, or whether he or she or they are going to feel more positive or negative or whatever. No. Their emotion, whether positively or negatively, it doesn't concern you. You do it the way you wanted to do it. You say it the way you wanted to say it. You act the way you wanted to act about it. Because you don't care about people. Because people emotion, you don't care about that because of the apathy. And the key aspect of that apathy, that is emotional blunting. And that emotional blunting that reduce the ability to feel, express, and positive, to feel is to reduce ability to feel or express positive and negative emotions. Apathy, the emotional blunting of the apathy. And another aspect of apathy, it is lack of motivations. In lack of motivation, you have many part of it. But the protocol fana kuntu do bandindro because what on in Kenya, well, kon all bag them come how to call it? It reduces your desire to engage in the goal. Ila goals and momenti ni tarot lato. Wala desire ka wala reduce. So now you reduce it a goal for moment. You can concentrate work. You concentrate, you put your energy on different things than your goal. Maybe example travel. Just kunun janeng, he went to inaugurate his 9-point agenda. But on a 9-point agenda, the reason of the gathering, the main reason of the gathering is inauguration of the 9-point agenda. But instead of, that 9-point agenda is the goal of that meeting, of that gathering. The main goal of that gathering is the 9-point agenda. So that 9-point agenda, instead of concentrating on that 9-point agenda, instead of telling the Gambians what are his plans, or how to go or how to establish that 9-point agenda, what he is going to do, how he is going to implement all those, instead of saying that to the government, telling that to the Gambian people, instead of explaining deeply to the Gambian people about his 9-point agenda torn, because Munekera ala desire to engage about the goal may see will reduce the, this is why totally left ayanya tilimunal Hussein Dabo Teng, UDP Teng, Hussein Dabolan Yurtale, Hussein Dabo Pantale, Hussein Dabola, because of the frontotemporal disorder, frontotemporal dementia, ala brain yung kono, the frontal and temporal lobes nyingoro tinyaro nyimen kitadi ba wo tinyaro nya fana nya na mande na explanation na after jaka tinyanya but tinyaro men futata ji wala ya tinna ala behavioral variant nyin tinyata ala inhibition on nyin tinyata nata ala apathy nyin kon ala apathy nyin fana ala key aspects on nyin kono this lack of emotion be wala from be jere fana fokande and ni nata about the next key aspect of apathy influence. The another key aspect of apathy, that is influence. Well, influence and what? Not caring about social, psychological, and personal events. Alat midi won biti ko gedela. Ni tam nabi aytala mitindula. ala concentration of on yanta kakemune miti wala propose ni fon jamaaj man akakemente aka fon divert completely aka fa kudo la kono me ya lon ko woni o fon ma nyota hanna fon kuma to nata menna bin nata la pour ka nyin nyin kita hanna kuma for example bin nata pour ka na sila dialogue but instead of ka sila dialogue ka dia amalla silo la ko na dia mo nyin kala kilum bebe yela malal weta UDP la kan dabal kan opposition or thing instead of Maya CJ at all. Not at all so-called many people stole instead of Kadobal Yininka, Allah Sulakuomo Munit, Allah Natam Kuomo Muneti, Mbal Marco and no, at all, but oppositional tend them, UDP tend them, Dabo tend them, Kara tend them. That is the influence, not caring about social, psychological, and personal, how to call it, events. Because we do bal mel be wol kam minam mi na dum bibi la na ta ba flanya ko natio na madolo na nyin na seno tenin no indalilo la thing senalo awa kito bende na tema na kindo momol atata ya jamitra kilomendi la bushi la ta falo na da kalode ala ministre de masaba kana kulombala kumofaka ko men ko ha trakido common cause they don't need it, they need follow. Well, at you okay. A man na kanya wala nakin no more kodak. kilati on noto e woman kanye kana false money nyinta fake money kate jowa nyin kito ben na tema because ken na kinno mol asal hakoto bidana audio be jam falal because malla fe ni kuntum kunta la connection na nyin you'll miss it malla fol. So we go to number 3, that is lack of empathy. Nina ta kuma lack of empathy. Yeah, wo fana is part of it is under behavioral variant in lack of empathy. So yana in lack of empathy nyinje o kama yita nako inability or unwillingness to understand, share or validate another person's emotions. Inability or unwillingness to understand, share or validate another person's emotion. Comme bota men fo karek man jala nga jam fa wala oda person emotion wala nyin ite be men fola ite men kela ite buke mira ninta nga nyim fo nga nyinke another person na emotion abe mun tinyala wala abe mun kela wala. You don't care about it. What man jam fa nga jila ba ngo mbota o kacha kan jala sen. But nyin lack of empathy akola because you don't have any empathy. So if you don't have empathy, men diate ebe ofla, you wouldn't care about nenga fa ala outcomes be kelamonet, ala damage be kelamonet. Wala ati men diata akake, na te aka bota gi ala wulundin kumala sine ko tol kana damage control. And any damage control ka damage men ki wol fan ka siata fa way damage yo men. And ni nata nyum fana ko nyum also deep effect interpersonal relationship. Ni lack of empathy. Alcoholic. It also deeply affects interpersonal relationship. Because of lack of empathy, you don't care about other people's feeling. For example, 2021 presidential campaign. Atara nema kungu. Abedi amla kweko. Nimmenka surwa kan fe ba fula leta bota Senegal. Nimmenka jola kan fe ba fula bota Casamance. Nimmenka fula kan fe ko bota Guinea. Akanyi mfomuno. Jumanyol lebe ofula wala mi ndemande kolla. We have to say it. Because come coming for Nadia Mokono, Tonya among Sabanya sort either Tonya or Fania, but Tema Kunan Hotel. So Abeman Nicole Feyola what? Because Mandicol le Bafla Wallakov. Niaja Bofala, according to him, Wallakov. But why? Nine or photo, Surwal Melbeji. Well, be Mira la Munela, Mandicol la Carola. Yara mandin ko men ton ni be nyokanja yara wol bu kan tol jube control gambian le cameron to bola senegal jolal ba fa nyo nyi mandin ko men tol kon ni wuluta yara wol bu kan tol jube ko gambian wol control bota kasama fulol di sem wol ba flan sol fana bota jina so wo ba tinna nan wol fana sina problème o dam mal so bo sini adu dam mal tem ni wo so bo dun tete ma kam moneke akawala for this empathy also. This also deeply affected interpersonal relationship. Interpersonal relationship or member manding calling yola temate about tinyanola as I affect no. Likewise between mandinka and fullers or mandinkas and yolas, mandinkas and wallers, ning interpersonal relationship or member tema as you affect no because of why? Lack of empathy. Without thinking, without considering the emotions of other peoples. Because at the other a personal interest so men na kilo ko mamati so nango na after midnight okay, and that causes the deep effects of personal relationship between citizens. Yana audio flanya ko ga funya min bi da sala hakro na update to be dara jam fakar ne ba causes ni frontotemporal disorder moneka cause because ni ajabe kala kule a cause aka cause nya dile lafta pour kana demanding fault from Jamal because neurons in the frontal and temporal brain will like a damage leading to shrink wala ka damage leading to shrink. So new frontal and the neurons many along wala ka damage in the frontal and temporal lobes. Mune ka all damage wala damage in ka kenyatile left na la ka domandin dim for walto so that I'll also understand why aka cause nyame. Yeah, because how to call it this generation, okay, it driving the abnormal accumulation of misfold proteins. There are misfold proteins. New abnormal misfold proteins, like, for example, like protein like tau and in TDP43. Tau and TDP43, new one misformed. They are abnormal accumulation. Waka new one misfold brain yunkono. Waka wala sab. These are misfold proteins. Mele alonko ikatra brain yunkono. And those misfold proteins will tau and in TDP43. Nina Takoros, up to 50% of all, or up to 50% cases. Well, fanaka community, genital or genetic basis, and run in the family. So, in frontotemporal disorder, a man can into 100% a baker soon misformed or misfolded proteins. No. Mbe two example deal and enjoy to law. Well, I'm into number one, proteins or la carola, and then number two, about genital or genetic basis in la carola. So, but Nina had you be procana proteins in la carola. The cellular and protein abnormalities. Because Nina had new frontotemporal disorder or frontotemporal dementia. In other you be true microscope level into. Akanin categorize or characterize wala nyinte. There are specific abnormal proteins. In specific abnormal proteins will be many along will accumulate. Ni will accumulate inside the nerve cell. It can accumulate water. So ni will accumulate water. Welcome like they interfere. The normal cells la function on you. It can interfere water. And ni interfere to water. Eventually it causes the neurons to die. It causes the neurons to die. The causes of frontotemporal disorder. It caused by the progressive damage and death of neurons. So, but when neurons in a death, what can you do? Ko ni nata you through microscopic level. You know, characterize there are specific abnormal proteins. Many along work inside the nerve cells. It can accumulate what. So ni accumulate out of foka it can interfere normal cells la function ni interfere to wala kati na neurons jinkafa. So wala nim proteins wala karo and the nim proteins wala the proteins flatala as an example wala minti tau protein. In tau protein about 30% of frontotemporal disorder cases. Jama akasunyi 30% of them okasunyi how to call it tau protein and another call it TDP43 proteins. The most common pathology Meyalanko is about 60% of cases involve the abnormal build-up. So, 60% of the cases Meyalanko it can be abnormally built within the nerve cell. Well, a protein is called TDP43. So, protein for tau protein and TDP43 proteins, protein or Meyalanko. accumulate. They are abnormal proteins. It will accumulate. Need to accumulate fenko nervous cell in kono fokaba. For a build up, and build up to fokaba come like interfere no. It will abnormal lead, but it will kana interfere normal cells la functioning. So ni interfere out wala ka atina ka neurons new far brain. So ni neurons new far brain, you got the frontotemporal disorder or frontotemporal dementia. Nibala, what you go to the genetic mutations. Well, for genetic mutations, for about 30 to 50% of all frontotemporal disorder cases, about 30 to 50% of all frontotemporal disorder cases are directly responsible for inherited form of the disease. Well, akasodo family in kono ika ketanola 30 to 50% of all frontotemporal disorder waka isi ketanola but one mutation on you fana kono there are 3 mutations melaron ko kumaya todo wal kono walam C9TRF72. In C9TRF72 is the most common genetic mutation. It links to frontotemporal dementia. And in C9ORF72 fana, afana ka kura ondol ken fe ikafa ALS, but mantra ALS la kuokono. But coming mutation on you mutation also can cause ALS. Well, I think but it is one of the, not one of, but it's the most genetic mutations. It links to frontotemporal dementia or frontotemporal disorder. And the second mutation is MAPT, MAPT. MAPT, it affects the tau protein. The tau protein just a few minutes ago. Among the 2 proteins, the tau protein, this MAPT mutation, what in tau protein affect. And the third one is GRN progranulin. GRN progranulin atefanamu another type of mutation. Atekamoneke in potential regulation akawala affect. Akawala change and affect the regulation of the proteins. So atela doko fanamol. So yaje mutation sabol yaje they all have link with the proteins, that 2 abnormal proteins. Melialonko will accumulate in the nervous cells pour normal protein in interfere wala do koto ni interfere wala do koto yo could wala do koto temmo after interfering wala do koto wato la ka ke yin neurons yin kafa brain kono and neurons ni wo fata brain kono wato menna wo wato la mu ika suffering from frontotemporal disorder or frontotemporal dementia. You come to cerebrum. Cerebrum is the largest and uppermost section of brain. World. Brain the largest and most upper section is the cerebrum. And ateni cerebrum fana atelemo brain in nervous system la command center. Nervous system and a command center begeler. This cerebrum. Atela responsibility is responsible for conscious, thought, intelligence, memory, emotion, and processing the sensory information and motor functions. In cerebrum is the largest and upper section of the brain, and the nervous system fanala command center the world. So the killing la do ko mo nyimbe today. Sensors and mirror thought intelligence la memory, emotions, and processing of sensory informations and motor function. Ala do ko mo. But in cerebrum fana it contains 85% brain yin. Ela brain yin ngo yo alchala hakoti nyi ngokole so do wale na fenjo nyi kunto ni comme ba men fokan cerebrum it contains about 85% of brain total weight brain weight nyala kuliani 85% of it roughly that 85% of the weight at the cerebrum contain that abare ni na da ko konga fanya nervous system fa hola command center baby guilt, and it is the largest and upper section of the brain. So where it almost roughly 85% of brain total weight I also. But at the cerebrum it is divided into two primary regions. Divided into two primary regions. Each regions fana a different control mechanism. So in two, cerebrum are divided into two. What I mean to do, the two halves are the left and right hemisphere. Are divided all into two, the left and the right hemisphere. Nina you be the left hemisphere side, the left side. Wala ka control ela brain hemisphere ala left side malakarola wala ka control ibalo ela body na buluba karonya. Yeah, it controls the right side of the body and also excels the logic and the language. So what I did not give a Yaja Kumenko Marakarola, the left hemisphere of the brain. Nina Raji Jube Ninja problem also Olati Kafu Comenko, Yaja Nim Mara Karoni problem also to think. Ibuluba Buloni Buluba Walakalanju. Ni Buluba Karo for that problem also, Imara Buloni. Ibuluba Sonella Juroka Walto Kalanju. So Wale Atina Kafu Comenko, the left side that control the right side of the body. And also excel in logic and language at the whilst the right side in fana will control the left side of the body. And often it's specialized spatial and creative task. Yeah. So new cerebrum fana konga is divided into two hemispheres and also into four main lobes. It divided into four main lobes. Nimbuness Zafoko Bualan Konon Bakono. Four main lobes. That is, four main lobes are PTOT. That FPOT. FPOT, F mean frontal lobes, P mean parietal lobes, O mean occipital lobes, T mean temporal lobes. In four main lobes. Frontal lobes, frontal lobes manage decision making, planning, personality, and voluntary muscles movement. So in frontal lobe la do ko kate all thinking, decision making, planning, and your personality. Nina ta jube na diamo dati wato. Ngaitan jele ko frontotemporal disorder. Akamoneke, it leading to is drastic changes in personality, behavior, and language. No ko da dilango for ko akawoleke. Drastically changes personality, behavior, and language. Not na ko da lato. Ndia mutala behavior ni aka change and personality ngoto. So amanjara ngamuru woto kam. Ko kaitan ni frontotemporal disorder and in frontal lobes nyin na do ko fana be wala kono. So nyin lobes nano nyin frontal lobes, parietal lobes, occipital lobes, temporal lobes. Nanem. But lobes fula ni nano kon lobe one, first one on in frontal lobe, and then last one on in temporal lobes, na diamo be warla wadaka. Because nyim fulo la tinyaro, wakafu yu nyomo, waleka frontal temporal disorder ni nati. Frontal temporal dementia. Because the frontal lobe and temporal lobe, nyim fulo nying yola join ko frontotemporal. Frontal lobe, temporal lobe, join together, frontotemporal disorder, the problem on you. So, fancy nano nata because there are 4 main lobes in the cerebrum. So, what I think nanganyu fulado fana samananji. But the main concern about these 2, in frontal lobe mengavo, ala decision konga menfo, making plan personality and voluntary muscles movement, ala do ko be wala kon. But still, second one on ying, this parietal lobe, ni nata you walam processing sensory information regarding touch, pain, and temperature, and occipital lobes that's decided entirely to interpreting visual informations like shape, color, and recognition. But I don't want to go detail in it because in the solar new floor, frontotemporal disorder, 2 lobes leonard. And second lobes, last lobe, temporal lobes. In temporal lobes, that handles auditory processing, language, comprehension, and memories. So these 2 lobes, frontotemporal disorder, in frontal and temporal lobes, combined together, in frontotemporal disorder or frontotemporal dementia in cause. So the first one of frontal lobes, ala go menting all for update on yin dati dulato personality akati nyaro men kiji common emotion behavior all for so manjela nganato and the last one temporal fana ngo fana fenja mala fana foji la we yin kol Kenya but pour kamena another men fana foji also memory yin temporal loss fana memory yeah so memory we mun so do yin yoto ni na ta gi tamna bi ala memory yin ayo fana damage wale ka tin na biya bina janna sidan aya fo nyinni. Tomorrow will come to the same place, to the same people, talking to the same people about the same issue, and in a different way, different parallel way, whereby from bazo for kunu nyina ma fotek. But ala memory ma wo ma kunu nga mem fotek wala be still no bina na be kuma do fa men ni wo fa mom wala opposite fa what kaji la be jella be fenkela sometimes I get but sometimes I book it out. He is suffering from frontotemporal dementia. Sometimes I book it out. Katunu want honey didn't know. No one other diamond before ya. Samanana taka hakilo to think after different people. But I tell Dula killing or more killing on the yemen for a bill, somewhere Muna Dula killing or more killing on the year, or cooking on the Yena Kumado for men, the woman you men no found fatter completely. Dokolum and Nina across in frontotemporal dementia, co emotion men careful. Emotion not only about abe memfola other people emotional be affect nyame but nina anata found emotional jube. This is why nabe diamla wato do akakamfa unnecessarily so much so that ni me akon dikido kam for wato nkafo alaman tankala o mari heart attack kanamba because akadiam nyama katra kamfa nyama bablo wala nyame unnecessarily ikajo emotion wala atinala in last one in kono man fudla do la strategy it has to meet the people store. Meet the people to whatever money. Mola sula kuolo, ila nyanta kuolo, kuolo meli alonko e hamen kuolo, kuolo meli alonko e shula tele me sotonum. Kuolo meli alonko wala mu itola nanta quality, ila sola kuolo anin kuolo meli be bata dike ka wala. But wo ina te yela kumovu. But because of he is suffering from frontotemporal dementia, Instead, kafole yes, Allah kuma kama ya fun nga fole nga moyle. I'll put note on it. Ninta ramba you balance me. No. I can't vara. Ha, ndina menkia alman nale afanya ten, alma afanya baraka, ima afanya baraka, iba afle mene baraka. Iya muneke, ima fenke wala kodolam. Iye karafalal. Iye fengo fenke ye wala kodolam watita la budu toto. Iye men fango donto wal toyala. Ite fango la iye donto ke ba donto le man sarel. Andu ni ba jo le tala budu tetarrawd. Ya wo na du wala ko na ite nyanta fura wala ala baraka bari ite be kaira o kaira kono ini la timbayal be wala kairo la kono wala ke jo itolle ke daniel itolle ke seto fata itolle ke ni la dimbal be jara itolle ke hana la tout brosol alka mel fenki abe mumo sango sango tol ka sulal abe nyulle ka tal kana amur $500,000 per month ke joal fente tarraw kono fente bolo kono o ko la le kana nyi fisherman beke in your family. Out of that 500,000 or collar, it can 150,000 a day. Kadila put in the mala da anela state house. Fenta bolela joto. Ando wal kotege ila jaralo wala ka ok hanne wal fam buka paracetamol sonso dono wal ke etel ka wala jaralo. Ni le misa dabala pano fala. Ngabe baba panatal. At least ni misa daw panta bla panta misa daw to da gambe jan fital e misa daw regle gambe jan bayte gambe fital mede ba ma fa regle no fo e banko la ko dole sunya ye play no kunda ka samba Senegal ka daw stage yalo. These are the things nim kuma si falo mo me yalongo he is suffering from frontotemporal disorder. Nabe nim kuma si fa fola he or she don't care about ninga for abe mo tinyala nte fambala personally na health nyim fo abe mo tinyala di because hanala diam nyala wuri nyala anger often is not good for his health. But at the more kalam they don't realize it because the frontal and temporal lobes of his brain is damaging. So this is why akakumo vola la 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 ole nyama. So I hope and I pray Allah doctor advisors they look into it. Yajibe if I like kiske maybe I'm wrong. I believe. Ni member afale ne sale ba afale na nyamen. But ko nga sa fe nyamen nga afale nya. I personally I believe that he's suffering from frontotemporal disorder. Could be possible. Doctors are we stay no laugh no I'm want to turn out. It's possible. I want to tell me anala gero, but until a meal on a gero, Tamnabia is definitely suffering from frontotemporal disorder or frontotemporal dementia. Kalnal badi malamin salam sanya aka badi mansa mba falale assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Yo mbadi ngol mbele kuma kan mo media lon ko le fota nga moy fana nga fota nyamin na mbele na broda moy lamin salam sanya ay kuma kan mo fo mba tentula ka jayi ka nimbara la dokuo sahayata kendeyata mba tentula wala ka jayi ka nimbara ay doku kendo mi yalon kay wala ke banku dingoli butum nsi mo fanan be tentu nsi mol be jayi mi yalon ko le la moy lalti banko kono ni banko fanan bandala nal badi ma pamani la barka ba